when I came out when I was 17, I was identifying as gay, as a gay man, but it was kind of a journey over a couple of years, getting to know people. I became a member of GLUB Club, which is what it was known as, and I'd like to point out which stood for gay, lesbian, uncertain, and bisexual. There wasn't even a T attached to it. And I remember when I was attending GLUB Club when had decided that I was considered myself part of the, on the trans journey, and somewhere on that spectrum of being, gender nonconforming. And it was, I remember it was kind of a different thing. It was like everybody was accepting, but there was certainly a point. I remember one of the comments being like, "Oh, there's no T attached to GLUB Club," and then it was like, "Oh, well, it's silent," and it was like kind of like a moment you were like, "Yeah, it kind of is." Isn't it? And that was kind of a moment. But like, you know what? It was I think the first of its kind. It was my introduction to the Berkshire Stonewall Community Coalition, into the community of the area. And it was hard to meet people in this area. It was hard to meet people my own age.
So you mentioned your time in college that was a lot more accepting. Do you want to go into that?
Yeah. I attended Berkshire Community College for about a year and a half before I went to UMass Amherst. For me, I didn't finish out my time at BCC, and partially because I really needed to get out of Pittsfield. I needed to get out of the area. I needed to get to an area that was more accepting.
Gotcha.
It's kind of important to me. And that was kind of really when I was able to kind of begin my own journey and my own identity. When I was living at UMass, I was part of the 2 and 20 floor, which was the first gay floor, LGBTQ plus floor, set aside space in a college. So it was like a safe space. It was like literally the entire floor was just all LGBTQ people, right? Like that was it. And so there was a whole bunch of us all living on the same floor. It was a crazy place. It was a lot of fun. And it was like really, I think for me, the first time I had a community of people my own age who were all going through a similar experience to me on some level. But even then, my experience was a little bit different. I was, identifying as trans, but like at the same time, I was running into the issues of being somebody who wasn't really looking to transition, but my identity was such that like people knew me as Genevieve. That was the name I was known by. Some of my friends weren't comfortable with that, and they would call me Jason. I was like, whatever, it doesn't bother me. I'm either way, but like, this is how I prefer to be known. So it was like, most of my friends called me Genevieve or G. A lot of people shortened it to G. And it was kind of a cool place. There were challenges there too. I didn't really fit into the trans community around me at the time. I felt like I was running into the same thing that I knew bisexual people would run into, where like, people would be like, pick a lane, and that's where I think where things are so much better on a certain level. Like we're much more accepting now of the fact that that we're all on a spectrum of some sort, right? We're all somewhere on nobody is this or that. Like we are all unique and individual, and we have our own way of approaching things, which I think is great. And I feel like we're much more on that journey. That's, for me personally, that's one of the things that I think is fabulous.
Beautiful. So you talk about, the name of Genevieve. I know you don't currently use it anymore, but does that name still feel like home to you? Yeah,
actually, every once in a while I hear somebody say the name Genevieve, and I turn and look. I react to it. I still feel like that's still part of my identity. It's just not a name that I use in Pittsfield, or that I've, I think I went so long with just trying to like fit in, for various reasons. I like moved back to the area, and it was really exhausting to feel like you were fighting for your place all the time. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah. So it was easier to just go by Jason, and I didn't care so much. I felt like I knew who I was, and I'll admit, like, part of it was just easier to date. Biological male who was attracted to biological male, so gay men were my dating pool, pretty much, and they would get a little confused when they met Genevieve. Especially back in, again, the early 2000s, it was kind of like I don't understand where you're at or who you are. Ironically, I found much more acceptance. Not ironically, I think it actually makes sense if you think about it. I found much more acceptance, even at UMass, in the pagan community, which I was a part of out there, because for me it was I have always felt like it was much more of an internal process, like it was much more of a spiritual process, like, I felt internally I feel more like I have more of a female spirit, and that's kind of part of my journey. But my physical presence, I don't know, I'll just blend in where I need to blend in most often. But I haven't always chosen to blend in. I have a friend. Sorry, I'm going off on a little bit of a rant here.
This is your interview. Go on.
I have a friend that I've had for many years. Actually, we were roommates at one point. Straight guy. We became roommates sort of by happenstance, through other friends, but essentially we were both gamers. Like, we both were Dungeons and Dragons nerds.
Nice.
But I was like moving in to an apartment with him on West Rizzuti Street. Again, this is many years ago. But I had like bringing my clothing, and I had a collection of dresses. And he saw this one black dress that I used to wear all the time to the Haven, which was sort of, it was Club Metro in Northampton, but on Wednesday nights it was known as the Haven. And so it was the goth night at Club Metro. And he saw the dress, and he looked at me, and he went, "Genevieve?" And I was like, and so he recognized me in that moment. He's like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in probably 4 or 5 years. How you doing?" And so suddenly we just became roommates. So it was kind of like kind of a strange experience. Once again, it was, going along with the way it's such a small world. Because again, this is somebody that like recognized me from the Northampton Amherst region, but like when we became roommates and over here in Pittsfield. But anyways, yeah, like I found more acceptance within I found the pagan community than within the LGBTQ community.
Oh, yeah.
Not to say that anybody was like mean or anything like that, or they felt like I was being attacked, but I felt other. I think that like a lot of who I feel I am, I already feel. I don't feel like I've really changed my feeling of who I am. It's just a matter of like how much I'm comfortable talking to people about it.
Gotcha.
And if anything, how much am I willing to say, continue to be like, oh, I don't want to, I'm just doing things for other people's comfort or just because it feels safer or whatever. So like talking about it. But, again, I'm where I'm at. I'm kind of like, I'm the people who know me and who care about me. I'm fine with them knowing me as Genevieve, and I'm fine identifying as Genevieve and being known as Genevieve to them. But I'm also okay with the people who know me as Jason and are content with that. I'm like, that's okay. Jason is part of who I am. It's, that's part of that being, for me, that's part of my experience. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle.
But Genevieve feels better.
Genevieve does feel better. Did I ever tell you how like I chose the name Genevieve?
You did not. That is an excellent story on topic.
I thought you might like that. Actually, so when I was going through, I guess this young thing in my teens, deciding to, going like, no, I actually think I'm trans. I was sort of like exploring names, and I was with a couple of friends, one of whom has since identified as trans, and I felt a very flattering conversation with them where they were making quite clear to me that, like, my experience had affected their experience, and they felt it helped them reach a certain point. So it was very flattering,
Definitely.
But we were kind of like just looking up names, because I'm like, okay, well, do you want to pick a new name or whatever? Do you like, where are you at? And it's like, and so I think they were going through like a book of baby names or something like that. I think that's what it was. Anyways, going through these names, like, yeah, whatever. And the name Genevieve came up, and it was kind of like instantly like, huh, I kind of like that name. I'm like, well, tell me about, like, what is the main, what can you tell me about the name? And they're looking up, they're like, well, there was a Saint Genevieve. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And like, well, she was this patron saint of Paris. She was a nun. I'm like, oh, I love nuns. I think if I had been a woman, there was a chance I could have been a nun. I just love nuns. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I'm really interested in learning more. And then they're like, okay, well, her feast day is January 3rd. January 3rd is my birthday. So, and I got this like instant like sense of prickles and pins and like, okay, this is it. This is like, because it would just like, it was the first name that like, that they was mentioned that I was like, huh, that's an interesting name. So I went to picked the name out, found out that, she was this, this nun who was a saint, and then her feast day was on my birthday, and it was like everything just kind of was like, whoof, so it was, that's where that came from, and it was just a decision right then and there. I was like, nope, this is who I am.
What a poetic happenstance.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
There were no other competing names?
No, never.